This is question 1. In what ways does your media product use, develop and challenge the forms and conventions of real media products? For my magazine coursework, this is my front page, and here I'd say the conventions really, they use original conventions of a media product. Here I'd say the masthead is it's different, but it's simple. Really, there's a nice effect. I used a font called Shady Lane, and I coloured it in red and black to go with the rest of the colour scheme, which is obviously, as you can tell, red, black and white. And I think it looks simple but effective as well. And then the cover image is of a girl who obviously represents the magazine style by the sort of way she's dressed and the way she's presented herself, because the magazine is indie and New Sound obviously means it's quite different, so it sort of draws attention to her because you can tell what the magazine's going to be about and you want to know why exactly she's on the cover, which is why it goes with the cover line. Interview with Zara Johnson, you obviously know, because it's the main text and she's the picture, it's going to be about her, and that brings the importance for that. And it's very conventional here as well, with like the fonts I've used for the cover lines. They're all sort of kept to one side, and there's not many, they're quite varied, so it doesn't look like too much. It's just simple, you can read it still. It looks a bit hard to read on here, but it's better on the computer. And I sort of used a background of like a sort of forest sort of type thing, like woodland, and I think it's quite effective. I'd say maybe it's kind of challenged the conventions here because it's kind of different and it's something new. So I think that looks quite cool and it's quite effective, and I think overall it sticks to the conventions more. I mean, certain things have been developed and have challenged them a little bit, but I'd say it more sticks to the original conventions for the cover page. And this is a double page spread. Here I think I've sort of maybe challenged them a little bit. Again, only a little bit. It's more stuck to how I've laid it out. I've sort of stuck to how I've seen magazines originally. Like here there's a picture on the left that covers the whole thing. I've seen that originally done in different types of magazines. So that sticks to convention there, and I've put the text on this side. So I think that overall sticks to it. But I've sort of made it original, and it's new, it's something you've never seen before, so it doesn't majorly stick to the conventions, it sort of challenges them as well. Like how I've used a different type of font here, that was Call Me Maybe font, for the name of her and for the headline of the actual article. And I used that because I wanted to portray her innocence in it, the fact that she's sort of a good girl in the whole of the article, and I think the fonts have helped me portray that, and I think it's a different sort of thing. I've never really seen it done. Well, I have seen it done, but I think this kind of makes it a bit different to how it's been done before. And then here as well, it's New Sound and the page number. On both sides of the page, I've used that because I've seen that in original magazines. I've seen a couple of indie magazines. I've seen one called Acoustic is the main one I've been reading, and I've seen that on all of their magazines. They have the page number at the bottom and the name of the magazine, so I think that's quite effective, but it also only uses conventions, doesn't really develop or challenge them. Here I've used a pull quote in white, which is again with the colour scheme, and this like really stands out from the rest of the text. It was one of the first things I've seen, and quite a few people have seen when they've looked at it. I think that's quite effective with what the pull quote says. Really draws a reader in, and again is conventional. Same with more pull quotes in the actual text. I've only used a couple so it doesn't overface the actual text, It just gives you an idea of what it's really about. Then the text, I've used the questions in red and the writing in black, so you sort of tell the difference, and it doesn't overface the reader, which I'd say that's quite different, because usually you see bold black writing as the questions, so it sort of makes it look different, and it definitely sticks to the colour scheme. And I'd say it's developed the conventions, sort of. And then there's picture, which it was just simple with a nice red border, so it sort of draws your attention to that as well. That's good. And the main image is the final thing. I've sort of made it quite different here, where the guitar's end comes out of the side and goes into the text, and how the text has gone around it. I think that was quite a cool effect, and I've personally never seen that done, but it might have been done, so I think that sort of does develop or challenge the conventions there with that picture. And then finally, there's the contents page. This was one of my favourite pages to work on, because I just thought it was the best one out of all of them, and I worked harder on this one than the rest of them. So again, sticks to the conventions, having the contents name above all the rest of the text is very conventional of a music magazine. Same with the columns, put columns in there, but I've sort of made them different colours to any original one I've seen before, and I've used the black text, which is of the colour scheme, and the white page numbers, which definitely stands out, and is one of the first things I see on this page is the whiteness, which I think is quite a cool effect of how it stands out the most. And I've then used a couple of pictures. I've used 4 pictures, which I think 4 pictures is just enough. It doesn't overface the actual text, so that people obviously still know what's going on through the text, but also through the pictures as well. Then I've used the main article as its own big picture with its own text inside, and obviously has a little bit more information on it than everything else does. And I think that's kind of a cool way I've done that. I like how I've put the border on that as well. So it's sort of, that definitely really stands out. It properly draws your attention to that. Makes you wonder why it's so big. I think that does challenge the conventions I've used there. I think that's pretty good. And then the final thing here is I've used icons for social networking sites, which obviously lets the readers know that the magazine is on them pages, which I think it does use certain magazines conventions here, because I've seen it done before on the contents page, but usually more on the cover page. So I think I've kind of developed here a little bit actual conventions, so I think that's pretty cool as well. I've done all that. And overall, I'd say I've used conventions of a music magazine, more than I have maybe challenged them. I think I've developed quite a few things throughout it, but I'd say maybe I've just used more conventions than I actually have challenged or developed them. So, yeah.